Hello everyone, welcome to today's guest speaker event. My name is Mike Winters. I am the chair of the Ventura County Cultural Heritage Board, and with me is Vice Chair Miguel Fernandez. Today's presentation is the next part in the Cultural Heritage Board speaker series entitled A Shared History, Diverse Voices Across Ventura County. The intent of the series is to promote meaningful public humanities learning and community dialogue focused on local voices and stories and their contribution to Ventura County's history. Part of the Cultural Heritage Board's role is working to help educate the community and share information on the county's historic resources, including those that are socially and culturally important. Today's event is the fifth part of the series, which will continue quarterly. These sessions are intended to create space for questions and dialogue to foster mutual understanding. All sessions are recorded for later viewing. I'll turn it over to Miguel to tell us about our speaker today.
Thank you, Mike. So today, Ms. Julie Tumamait-Stenslie, a local Chumash elder, will speak on how Indigenous people have lived alongside the natural world in the region for thousands of years. By way of background, Ms. Tumamait-Stenslie, who is deeply rooted in her Chumash heritage, serves as a cultural resource consultant and is renowned for her cultural education programs throughout Ventura County. With ancestral ties to at least 11 Chumash villages, Julie is a respected board member of the Ojai Valley Museum and actively contributes to the museum's accessions committee. Living in Ojai for most of her life, Julie, along with her husband and 3 children, is committed to preserving and sharing her cultural heritage. So with that, please join me in welcoming Ms. Julie Tumamait-Stenslie.
Want to know how tall Chumash women were?
I can't stand behind there.
You'll just hear a voice. So thank you so much for having me here today. And it's so important, I feel, that always when we have the opportunity to come and tell people, tell our story. I think we all should be up here telling our stories. And it's important for people to know their place. And for us here, this place has lasted a very, very long time. I'm going to start out with a prayer that I want to take out into all directions, and I have to write them down because I do confess, and this is something my father and I shared, is that when we worked together from the mid-'80s to 1992 when he passed, is that we wouldn't make anything up, we wouldn't lie, and we would not be ashamed to say we do not know because of what happened to us in our history that forced assimilation and colonization, removed much of our history. So when we look at our history and the recordings of John Peabody Harrington and other anthropologists that came through, our culture is based on the information with just less than a dozen people in the different regions. So I'm going to start out with this prayer. Atieta kusawan kakanukmawa ki husat na ko'y lokay hutash kalukal ipish itiashu hu am susam sisintep. Let us listen to the voice of the Father, Son of nature, so that you will pay attention to the voice of Venus, that which there are creatures in this world, that all creatures of the earth may feel the powers of the sun and the spirit of Venus. One of our most special elders, Fernando Labrado Quetzalcoatl, he knew everyone and he went everywhere in the world, and he would listen to the grandfathers, and they were so happy to hear him still continuing to speak. Can you put the map slide up? There you go. So that's 7,000 square miles of territory and 4 Channel Islands there that our people inhabited in those days. And where the languages are not extinct, but they're very, very difficult. And some of them aren't recorded at all. So mostly Ventureño, Barbareño, and Obispeño, about 4 of them out of the 5, and then there's those dialects. But Fernando, he always said, we have this wonderful books that have been printed out, some not published, you have to go into research libraries. But I love his quotes. One breath of the sun, there's always a Fernando says quote. So here I quote, "Language is a flower." And where he got this saying from Placido, and Placido was he lived till 136, according to Dr. Cephas Bard. But as we go further on, Fernando says that as the flying fish is frightened by the shadow of the pelican, as the young deer is frightened by the coming of the eagle, and as the sea lion is frightened by the scream of the gull, so will a bad man be frightened when his conscience confronts him. Pretty scary, huh? We always said that if we did something bad, the sun was watching. And if the sun wasn't out, inevitably somebody would come along and said, "You've done this bad thing." Some people call it karma. And with braiding, I will have this because I want to make sure I get the quotes right. Braiding sweetgrass. Some of you have seen or heard Robin Wall-Kimmerer speak these beautiful from her Anishinaabe nation, and she comes in as a biologist, elder scientist, and renowned person of great knowledge. God put plants and people exactly where they belong. Let's go to the next slide. So, not everybody's in this picture. I have my Aunt Margaret, my Uncle Vernon, my Daddy Vincent, my grandmother Maria Barrios, my grandfather Cecilio, and it's cut off a little bit. That's his sister. Oh my gosh! See, you get brain fog. I'll come back to her. She taught some of the Western people how to make horse reins. She used to chew the leather and braid, and these beautiful quirks and reins for horses. And she did amazing work. Some of her work is in the Ojai Museum out there. So they're out there. I asked my Aunt Margaret one day, where was this picture taken? Oh, maybe at the Ore Ranch, or I don't know, maybe up in San Luis Obispo. I don't know, they used to lend us out. Yeah, okay. So my Aunt Bertha is not in this picture. But both my father's parents were Chumash. My grandmother, Maria, was half. But on the Tumamait family. Now I know it's a very interesting name, and for most of you who carry your ancestral name from your different countries, not too many people were allowed to do that in the Chumash around all that 7,000 square mile territory. So my great grandfather, Juan de Jesus, he grew up in Ventura right around the mission period, and his parents died. So the people there, the village of Mitzkanakan, which is near the mission, they named him Tumamait. It means an orphan, one who was raised by his grandparents and learned to carry things on his back. Later on during the mission period, the Padres wanted to give him the name Marquez. Took him about a second. Yeah, that's okay. I got a name. So he kept a native name as a surname. And as a result, I use that name, Tumamait, to the strength on carrying things on the back, because he was a very strong personality, fought for social justice, environmental justice. He built the Olivas adobe. So next time you're over there, we'll say thank you. So let's go to the next slide. These are some of the other pictures of my grandmother, my Aunt Isabel, and later on I knew my Aunt Isabel. They all lived on Sunnyway, down in the avenue in Ventura. And my daddy, when he was 5 years old, later on there he was. He worked at a ranch. That's where he met my mother, Lucy Castro. She and her family came into the United States around 1915 from Guanajuato, Mexico. And he was working at the Canet Ranch out at Cañada Larga, and that's where they met. He loved riding and doing that ranching, but he was also a boxer in his early days. He was a lightweight boxer in Ventura County. There's some wonderful stories of Chief Bender, Injun Joe Castro. I mean, it was a wonderful, they go to Soper's Ranch there in Matilaha Canyon. Go ahead. There they are, picking up their, I don't know the man, there's Patrick Palomino. I don't know, we don't know him. But this is just the work they did, baptismals, You know, it was, they went with the flow with everything, in some cases denying their ancestry, because it was not such a good time post-mission to utter certain things that were against the church, or, you know, a lot of our culture was demonized. No one was speaking the language in those times. So, you know, they assimilated pretty well. They're drying apricots up there in that one photograph. These are the people that John Peabody Harrington, he grew up in Santa Barbara, went to the Smithsonian, and he came back and did a study on he loved linguistics. So he had Carol Beth Lard come in, and, well, she wasn't Lard then, just Carol Beth. I can't remember her maiden name. Anyway, she loved linguistics also. We didn't have a written language, it's a phonetic. So all these people, Juan Justo, Rosario Cooper, there's Fernando at the bottom, Candelaria Valenzuela, she's from the village of Sespeak. Now that might sound a little familiar to you, maybe if we said the word Sespeak up in the Ojai Valley. Our creation stories are very interesting, and so Maria Candelaria had stories. She's a wonderful basket weaver, much more than that too. Mary Yee, she comes from San Ynez. Mary Yee comes from Santa Barbara, the last fluent speaker in the Barbareño language that when she passed away in like 1968, the headline said, "The last Chumash dies." It's like, well, no, not really. It's the last fluent speaker that had passed. Her children today, Ernestine de Soto, still carries on that language. Maria Solares, she's from San Ynez. Luisa Ignacio is Mary Yee's mother. And I think even Lucrecia Garcia is related. But all these people, there were a time when they knew what they were saying to these science anthropologists, that they did this intentionally because they knew how important it would be to us. So I always give them that love and appreciation for them to not be afraid to talk about certain things. We don't know everything about our culture. It's not, like I said, it was forbidden in many ways. Go ahead. Petra Pico, she lives right, or her little adobe was right where that big yellow arts building is, that complex at the end of Thompson Boulevard, the artist community. She was the first artisan out there, so it's a proper place for that building to be. But you know, her baskets were just amazing. Women who wove baskets in those days, I mean, they were weaving presentation announcements. They were telling the person receiving the basket who they are and their name and the dates at these baskets. If you ever want to see some, Ojai has a little collection right now. Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History has the biggest collection of Chumash baskets. So if you want to take a little journey there, you'll see the beauty in some of these baskets. There's over 240 stitches per square inch. Go ahead. There's a couple, Apollonia Guzman, again with Petra Pico, and probably the next little basket weaver coming up, sitting on the steps of the mission here in Ventura. And you see that the regalia is no longer there. They're wearing Western clothes, and you know, very, very quiet, beautiful people. These women who wove their baskets, they put everything into their basketry. They were artisans, they were scientists, they were teachers, and everything that around the world, don't we as women always need baskets for things? So they provided, and then economically they sustained themselves through selling their baskets later on as people started coming in. And speaking of baskets, this is one of the ways you can see how we dressed in those days, very simply. Sometimes leather skirts, sometimes fiber skirts. Here they're not going to wear their leather out in the outside. It's too hot, for one thing. And they'll wear these grass skirts, but on their heads, if you notice, you can see the little basket hats that they're wearing there. It not only keeps their head cool, but it was often said with other people, I think it was Hupa, and I think it makes a lot of sense, that women should always wear their basket hats. And we've gotten away from that because a woman is so powerful that the power would just shoot out the top of their heads and cause holes in the sky. Yeah, yikes. So what they're doing right now, they have these little seed beaters, and the, way in the background, I can't remember what they were doing out there. They're like some of these seeds, like they'd probably be, say for instance, the chia sage. Little tiny short bushes that have these little seeds in the pods. They beat those seed heads, and all of the seeds would, not all of them, but most of them would fall into the basket, but purposely. Purposely they would let some of those seeds drop onto the ground. Because, you know, going back to some of the philosophies, you didn't take everything of one thing. You didn't pick the first, you didn't pick the last, and what you did take, you would use all of it up. So some of it was purposely left on the ground for the next season. And the basket hat also served as, that basket she's wearing, you can see the straps. Some of it's a cone-shaped basket. Some of those, they were so heavy, like if you're doing acorns, you would wear the strap around your forehead so that basket hat would protect your forehead from getting indented from the weight of the cone-shaped basket. But yes, this was a, right now, I think chia sage is gone. It's already been, the season is done. So you had to get out there like around February. That's about their season. It's a short season. So you had to, and they're very, even today, they're expensive in trading, as they're not so expensive now because they're coming from a different country, but to go out and gather them like that, that pine nuts, certain foods had a very high economic status. So there's only certain places where the chia seed grows. It's a fire chaser. So every time fire, that's one of the benefits of fire. For some plants, they propagate with that nitrogen that's in the ash. This is a very large basket, and as you can see that on the outer part, that is the asphaltum. Some people call it tar, but the tar is a byproduct. So here it's being used that it probably held water in there. Sometimes we had to waterproof these baskets in order to hold liquids or even to cook in them. And, well, the hot tea, the sun tea. So that asphaltum was layered over the baskets, hardened, and then was cooled so that it could hold water for maybe, I don't know, the different types of uses that we all need water for. So this was, sometimes the baskets were inlaid with the tar, with the asphaltum. Hot rocks and the tar were put in there, and they're layered, and after layer, the asphaltum would melt and coat. Sometimes these baskets were woven so tightly you didn't need that, because once they got wet, they would hold the liquids. Here's just an example of some of the basketry. This is a collection out at Ventura Museum. They don't always put them out. They're in the back. So I asked if I could take a few pictures. So you can see the modern animals there. That might be a deer, but that looks like a cow up there on top. And they would even dye some of the material with natural vegetable dyes, or like say oak bark, or they'd be buried with walnut husks, things like that, to give them that extra color for the designs there. So some of them tell a story that we'll never be able to decipher. And just the brilliance of the technology. We use Juncus acutus. Sometimes Gilbert and Sueta called it Juncus attacus, because it has a point on the end, like a spear. So whenever I go and I'm not a basket weaver. I tried, and it says when you make a basket, your first one you have to give away. That's going to ensure you more success. That's a preparation you have to do in order to get your material that well, because if your edges show, you'll be laughed out of the room. So there's a lot. It's one that if some of you who are do sewing or knitting or crocheting, you know that that's an inward type of work. That when people see you doing these things, they leave you alone. It's very meditative. So for these women, it would take almost a year in some cases to make baskets like this. And it was something, you still had to do all your other work, and then you'd come back and finish it and work on it again. So the other reason why wetlands are important is not only do these plants help to filter and clean our waters, they also provide the material for this type of work. There's just a couple others. Go ahead. Did I do that twice? And this one, I don't know if you can tell what those are. She's not Chumash, but we have, and I have made it part of one of my journeys to observe all types of different things. I just want to know. Those are acorns all around her. And one of the things that Native peoples have been very, very excellent at is that she didn't gather all these acorns herself. We even had times when we would go to certain groves, because you know there were times when there were so many oak trees that a squirrel can come all the way from Ojai to Ventura and never touch the ground, just hopping from tree to tree to tree to tree. So in those times when the abundance of this particular nut from the oaks, that it was going to rain as well. The trees, everybody communicated with one another. All these trees were interwoven with one another. You think about the oak and the root going deep into the ground, but they also go outward too, and they interlock with one another. And not only does that help them communicate with one another, oaks don't need to pollinate themselves, but when you see the wind blowing, you see that beautiful yellow pollen, it is going all over to each other. But they are communicating with one another, they're holding each other up. What we're doing today is we're trimming the branches, we're trimming their arms, we're trimming and cutting off their anchors. So that's why a lot of our oak trees are just, they're doomed. You know, it's really kind of sad when we don't think of them as needing help and needing one another. So we dismiss them. So for many people around the world actually, it's the keystone species. So as we go around the world and look at different people, everybody had the oaks, everybody used acorns in many different ways, and so we sustain ourselves on this. This is going to last them probably that whole entire year, till the next year, because the next harvest might not be so much. It may come super late, it may come not at all. There's sometimes the trees don't even fruit, and that's when the droughts kick in. And it's like, uh-oh, here we are, 5 years, 7 years. I've witnessed drought. How many of you been in that season? That was probably about a couple decades ago or so. So anyway, this was very, we've learned things about acorns. There is a place in Agora. Did you know that she sells acorn flour? You can look it up. It's gotten a little expensive, but it is a whole food. It's everything your body needs. And you can, it's gluten-free, so you don't have to worry about that. If you want it to be puffy, you have to use yeast. Otherwise, you make bread, you make soup, you can put it in any recipe that holds, you know, where you need flour. You can mix it with other flours. And there's no taste in it, because once you get rid of that bitterness, there's nothing left. There's nothing left in there. It's just protein, carbohydrates, and a lot of good nutrition for the body. In that time that we recognized that nature had multiple uses. Not only do the acorns sustain people through their food, but you might poke a little hole in the top of the acorn, stick a little stick, and spin it like a little top for the kids, a little toy. Women would pierce them and wear them as necklaces around their neck. When they would singe their bangs, I got bangs right now, I'd take a little piece of oak bark, the stick, set it on fire, blow it out, and singe my hair and make my bangs. But then your hair smells. You take an acorn, crack it open, turn it into paste, and rub it on your hair and your scalp, and it conditioned your scalp and took away the smell. So you also had the bark of the oak that children were encouraged to chew on because it strengthened the teeth of the gums. You also use the oak for shade, for firewood. And everybody, the community that lives under the oaks is incredible. Thousands of relatives live in and around those oaks. Next slide. That was 2004. That's what started me, looking at the oaks and acorns. It was the second week of August. I'm driving down Grand Avenue in Ojai, and the street is loaded with acorns. I like immediately pulled over. Somebody said, "Oh, I saw you sweeping your driveway." The acorns. I said, "That wasn't my driveway." I was just walking into people's front yards and sweeping up acorns. So, I don't know what average rain is in Ventura, but in Ojai it's 17 to 19, maybe even 15 to 17 inches a year. I told my cousin, it's going to rain. 2005, we got 76 inches in Ojai, 96 in Latilaha Canyon, and that was the year that La Conchita fell. And ever since then, this last rain where we had the 2 consecutive days raining forever, that fall, and I didn't, because I only noticed it in the second week of August, but in the mid-July, the acorns were again, not as big as this, about half the size, but they were still pretty big. Again, the valley loaded, they were falling in mid-July, and every tree was loaded. So when we communicate, when we listen, when we observe, we can predict and just go and, you know, when the fires came, I asked people online, we can't get together in your altars, let's call the wind to subside. That was when not Paradise, the recent fires, Palisades, thank you. That when the winds were here, I was asking people, please don't demand, just ask for the winds to subside into that, you know, just to not spread the fires, and for the rains to come, but in that gentle rain that needs to help put these fires out and cool things off. And you know, within a couple of days, we did see in our area, I don't know about out there, but because we're afraid that it's, you know, it's going to come this way, or who knew. But anyway, we always pray, and I think that that's what the earth is missing these days, is that recognition of what it did for all of us. So let's go to the next slide. The acorns became a game. When boys needed to hunt, those are acorn caps on a stick. It's called a ring and pin game. So you can see this comes from the Southwest Museum there. So the object of the game, you'd start out with one ring on the string. And like the ball in the cup, you try to get the ball in the cup. Here you try and get the ring on the pin. And when you get really good at it, 16 rings. What does that do for a young boy playing these games when he's a native boy going out with his mom, his dad, hunting? Learn to hit a moving target. So we have these games, just like everybody else around the world, to help, you know, get them those skills that they needed. Okay. Here I was out at the river, and one day I just felt inspired, and that was right during those rains. Water was flowing. The last heavy rains we had, it carved out a 200 feet wide girth across the Ventura River, 10 feet deep. I mean, there were things that were brought up through that river that was amazing, just totally transformed the watershed out there. But I wanted to read this quote from Audrey Shenandoah Onondaga. There is no word for nature in my language. Nature in English seems to refer to that which is separated from human beings. This is a distinction we don't recognize. The closest word to the idea of nature translates to refer to things which support life. It is foolish. It is a foolish approach for humans to think themselves superior to all the life support system. How can one be superior to that which one depends on? And if we're not careful, you know, we still should depend on our mother to help us. And then a woman tending the wild. This is again from Kat Anderson in her book. A woman, Lucy Smith, her Pomo mother, she says, "We have many relatives, and we all have to live together. So we better learn to get along with each other." It wasn't hard to do. When the baby gets to be a man or a woman, they're going to help you out. Plants, birds, animals, everything on earth, they are our relatives. And so as we can, you know, other people that maybe you're familiar with, Joseph Campbell, the grandfather of mythology, he once said, if you refer to nature and all its beings as they or thou, it changes rather than it and them. So when we go out, and we have to recognize that all of us We're no different from one another in those times when we had only what was there in Mother Earth to support us and help us, shelter us, feed us, clothe us, and the medicines that came from the animals and plants, and things that we wouldn't understand about the multiple uses that where we moved away because of industrial age, making things easier. That I don't know about you, but I remember growing up, every time we'd have a little tummy ache, my mother would go out and get the yerba buena, make a tea, have us drink it, several cups during the day. Right now, for all the COVID and everything, I had my formula of elderberry blossoms, rose hips, and yerba santa. The elderberry is your immune building system. The rose hips were the vitamin C, and the yerba santa broke up the mucus in the bronchial tubes. So that was my tea. I told this story to a man where my daughter's at in New Hampshire going to school. Says, yeah, you know, people that I know, they're Michigan, I don't know where they're at, Midwest somewhere. They're using English ivy. I went, what? And this is when I'm tearing, everybody refers to our plants as weeds. So here I am tearing out the weed of the English ivy out of my yard. And then I thought to myself, oh, no, I shouldn't be doing this. It's not your fault you're here. Somebody in England said, I'm not leaving my medicine behind. What are you good for? So I look it up. Respiratory tea, also inflammation. There's like about 4 or 5 different things that this plant can do for you, can still do for you. But yet, you know, we kind of dismiss that and go to the pharmacy, get some, I don't know, something, whatever we get. Go ahead. So anyway, this pole here, this has condor feathers and then a variety of feathers around it. In our time, our winter solstice place is that long slope at the far west end of Ventura as you're heading out to get onto the 101. And so for, you know, thousands of years, people gather up there for like 5 days and celebrate. These poles were positioned in a place where the feathers, the condor feathers, were facing east and west. And that is a sacred place where the energy of sun and moon and all prayers can go in a clear, uninterrupted vibration. Japanese people feel that way, Hawaiian people feel that way, and I'm sure there's probably other nations who work in Ojai Valley. It's the only east-west valley, right? And everybody says, oh, it's so special. Well, it is. It is very special, and the power that sits in that valley. Some people are a little frightened of it. And so that's because we woke them up. Me and my friend Hiroshi, he's a Shinto priest, and I would do my thing, and we started waking up the deities. So that's why Ojai is now a little bit more higher vibration than what it used to be. So this is, there's my feathered fan, there's a seaweed kelp bulb rattle, the abalone shell. Now most of you are familiar with bundling and burning white sage. How many of you experienced a ceremony with that and used it or had somebody use it? We didn't do that. It isn't traditional for many Californian natives. So what is happening right now, you can go on YouTube and watch a film called Saging the World about the appropriation and almost the devastation and possibly the extinction of white sage. It is being ripped out of the back countries, it's being sold nationwide. And so what we try to tell people, don't be buying it. Grow it in your home. It's like San Francisco is a little too far north, but I found out that it is growing out there. From there all the way to Baja in California, that's it. That's the only areas where it grows. And so people are going to all these places and literally ripping it out by the roots and bundling them and selling them around the world. So we all have other plants that are indigenous to our spiritualities. We did use sage in ceremony, but we never bundled it. So what I have in there, I don't know if I want to tell you. I often say, then you're going to go out there again. But, you know, it is a beautiful, I will tell you, and I won't explain anymore, Artemisia. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful plant, and we used it several different ways. One of the things Fernando said about Artemisia, when the hot summer, you got your hat on, put some fresh sprigs inside your hat, because it'll keep you cool. And it's like an aromatherapy kind of thing. So I'll give you that. Full moons, me and Hiroshi for 12 years would just randomly find a place and go out and just start talking to our grandmother Moon, in which either last night or tonight, she's full. So when we talk about our universe, we have 3 worlds, upper, middle, lower. So the sky people are up there doing all their work. They play a gambling game up there nightly, and at the winter solstice, the score was added up. And our cave paintings, I don't like calling them rock art. They're not art, they're not doodles. These are prayers, these are ceremonies, and to me they're as equivalent as an altar in a church. They're very powerful, and there's even at times when people want to emulate them and put them on their, just use them. Like, no, because we were not warring type people. We like to get even other ways, like with curses and spells and poisons. So some of these images was that enemy that you're praying. They're also, these images were the weather doctor going in there using certain particular plants like Momoy, which is the datura, to have these visions to communicate with the sky people to find out who won the game. And at the winter solstice, the score was added up. And it would determine, because the ante was rain. So if one team won, there'd be no rain. If they lost, then they'd have to open up the sky and all the rain come in, so that we had all this plenty. Moon refereed that game. She controls all emotions of all living beings, including us. She controls the tides of the ocean here in our world, and she gives the power of the same to control emotions and help into our oak trees. The oak trees here are her children in this world. So we always give reverence to her, that she lights the night sky. When she goes through her stages, it's because golden eagle holds up the upper world with his wings, and when he stretches out to stretch, he causes the stages of the moon, sometimes a full eclipse of the moon. And then she'll say, "Get back to work." So he pulls his wings up, and there she is, her beautiful round self again. And then down below, here we are at the issue. And what I mentioned earlier about when we see our landscapes, we may notice a figure staring out at us as we're coming down the Conejo Grade. There's a woman. Or in Ojai, there's Chief's Peak, where he's laying down facing west. Or in east end of Ojai, Whale Rock Ranch, where there's a stone whale about 150 feet long. Those are our first people. And many beginnings of a lot of peoples around the world had giants that walked and roamed this world, but then flood or fire destroyed them. Here it was flood, and when the waters receded, all these first people became our hills and mountains and stone. And then we had to be reborn and recreated. One story talks about us being created in the upper world. Another story has us being created out on the islands, and that's the Rainbow Bridge story. So you can look these up. I'm running out of time. Here we are up at, with Hiroji and myself, and some people, we never advertise, just people would say, "Hey, you having a ceremony?" Yeah. So, the cross in Ventura, we're up there. And where I think I have a coat on there, but I had we have a panel skirt. So on the panel of my skirt, I had these Cooper Hawk feathers that I had sewn into them. I didn't kill the bird. A man called me and said, "Hey, I got this dead bird. Maybe you could use the feathers." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'll honor it." So I had the feathers in my skirt. And while I was up there, I wanted to just say a little prayer for my mom and dad. When I saw this Cooper Hawk flying above me, off to the side, and I looked at it, and I said, "Oh, how pretty." And he's flying closer to me. And then he kind of looks at my skirt and went, "I didn't kill him." I didn't, honest. And the minute I put that tobacco down and looked up, vanished. So we have these apparitions that come at us from time to time. I could not find out where the heck this bird had gone. Man, he's gone. So he was satisfied. But these went for a long time. Now, one of the first people did not transfer into a mountain or a stone or hills. This is, some of you are very familiar with this, datura, Jimson weed it's called. Now, when I met Kunandera out at not Hollister, but one of the beaches at a campground in Santa Barbara, we were talking about medicine, and she was talking about the ayahuasca. And then I said, "Well, hey, do you know about Momoy?" "Who?" I said, "The datura." "Ooh, la doctora." So this was one of the plants that she was a very powerful medicine woman in the time of the giants and the people there, the first people. But when the floods resided and all waters came down, she was transformed into this beautiful plant here. And where the way it's purple, the way it is right now, is because of fire. Usually they're not that purple. This was taken in Malibu during the Woolsey fire. Her whole underneath is that solid purple. Beautiful plant, but powerful. Even her stories, if you want to read some of our stories, December's Child is one that is very, has about 111 narratives. But she plays the grandmother who's very smart and very powerful. So we don't ever want to mess with her. She is the one that when people, as you would be familiar with the Vision Quest, where people would take the peyote, go up in the hills. This one, you were laying in a home with the medicine person, and it was administered to you, a very small amount, and you would go into a coma, pretty much. And now the other definition, and then you have these visions. So you would wake up out of that and get yourself better and feeling normal. Then you'd go paint them in the walls of the caves. So it's very similar. How many of you have taken acid? I know there's more. There's more of you. Well, it's kind of like you say, hey, did you see that? No, they didn't see that. That's what that does. But administered just too much, you're done. You stay in that coma and you're done. So it wasn't required that you did this and go through this process, because the process was to achieve an atashwi, a spirit helper, dream helper, power animal. It could come to you in this vision as the oak tree, a deer, a deceased relative, a skunk. I want skunk on my side. They're cool. Mountain lion, all these different animals, and they would help you. Even the little hummingbird. Now, most birds, eagle, hawk, all of those, they all mate for life. They all raise, little birdies together. Where the hummingbird, he doesn't do that. He doesn't mate for life. He likes to flirt. And he's joy, and he's fun. So if you want a little power animal, you can emulate the hummingbird there. And so as people wanted more than one power animal, they would go through this series, a few times in order to have more power with you. Mine is my father. My father comes to me a lot. He was always telling me about my sister Rosie when she was ill. And there'd be an oxygen tank in the dream, and he would be warning me without saying too much. And then, of course, 3 days later, she'd end up in the hospital. Happened several times. He told me when I was going to get an award from Ventura County for Volunteer of the Year. That was like in 80, I don't know. No, it had to be a post-daddy, 93 or 4. And I woke up because I thought I was going to die. And Bruce goes, no, honey, isn't he going to? I said, no, he's going to be with you at that. Oh, okay. I didn't know. You always wear a suit at funerals, so it's about the only time. So your relatives are there with you is what I wanted to say, is that they're always there watching over you. This is a cute little plant that people always mow down every year. This hutash seeds. They're even smaller than the poppy seeds. They're not edible, but they were used in ceremony. Oh wait, maybe they are edible. Uh-oh, I forgot. But it's an adorable, like little tiny flower that comes up in the spring also. So there was a burial once that Jan Timbrooks describes. There were 2 quarts of these seeds buried with that person. So how they used them, I'm not completely sure, but I just love the color and the vibrance of it. The ant doctor. We tell our children, if you're not good, I'm going to send you to the ant doctor. Harvester ants were gathered. It was always an older woman, grandmother, you would go to these to this particular house that she was in. She would take you out. You would be fasting for like 12 days within this treatment. She would have you go out and you would gather a bunch of harvester ants. Then she'd take a piece of oak stick, put it in there, grab 3 or 4 of the ants out of there, wrap them in little eagle downy feathers, and then she would tell you, okay, say ah, and you would swallow up to 20 to 30, 30 to 60 of these little ant balls. Then she'd tell you to go lay down and rest. And then she'd come around the backside of you and scare you. which the ants break out of those little feathered bundles in your body and start biting their way up and putting you into an hallucinatory state. And you would do that for these 12 days, and it's incredible, you know. But that's the deep connection that people had, and where, you know, you go to the dentist any time of the day, it's no big deal. But to go back to some of these practices and the medicines and their power. This here, it's not in our region, but we have some of these stones. In some places, they refer to them as a fertility stone. And fertility can be many, many things. And some, up in Northern County, when a couple is having problems conceiving a child, they may go, and it's in an isolated place, away from the village where they have lots of privacy. They would pray, they would carve out these holes, and in there is the rock, the granules, mixed up with water and a paste, and the woman might put designs on their body, and they would try to conceive right at that time. For us, we don't have that information. It's been lost. We may have done that, but we call them rain rocks. And my only experience, there's several around our areas in, you know, very exact locations. And the closest thing I came to during the Thomas fire, we were up in the Upper Valley, and there was a big, giant one sitting right in the middle of this ranch. I told the guy, I said, why is this here? Oh, the woman wanted to build her house by the creek, so we moved it out of there. I went, really? Okay. So I'm telling the work crew, because we're trying to explain why, as Native peoples, we're there following the debris cleanup. I said, this is exactly why. We wouldn't want you to have your dozers just hit this rock, a sacred rock, and, you know, not think nothing of it. So when I'm explaining what I just explained to you, one guy has his foot on the rock and he's doing this to it. So I told him, I said, hey, if your friend comes a year later and said, hey, my wife's knocked up. You're going to come back to this moment. And then the water trucks are going all the way up the Sespe, all the way to the top of the hill. Another friend, he's like going, oh, I like rain, and he touched the rock. And so he goes, oh, I said, okay. The water truck almost fell off the mountain because it rained so hard. And so everybody knew that he was the weather doctor, and he brought the rain in. And so yeah, we just never know the power of intent, or, you know, just the simplest little act that we do in the world, and what the results can be. I won't spend too much time on that, but, you know, Native peoples, Hawaiians, and I forget who else, are the only ones that had to demonstrate their ancestry and blood quantum. So we have to, anytime I wanted something, this is from Nanuwani, we have, I think, 6 villages that we come from Santa Cruz Island and Santa Rosa Island. So there we are down below, my daddy and his sisters, and then it goes all the way back. We have now, not so much on the mainland, but as people have been studying our culture scientifically, how long have we been here? Did we come from, there's my great-grandfather right there, one of the Jesus. They spelled it with an S, and I don't know why. We never did figure that one out. But he was baptized in 1811. We don't know if that was his year of his birth. But the numbers for occupancy in North America, that we came through these Bering Straits where the lands were, you know, melted and made a quarter, that's a different story. That's somebody else. It wasn't us. 13,500 years of occupation here in this region. That number has now changed, and we've always known it. I mean, everybody's trying to say that our creation stories, like I said, has us either coming from the sky or from the earth. So the new date on the islands, and not on the mainland, we can date some archaeological sites here, 12,000, which isn't bad. But the new date, San Miguel Island, 19,000 years. I'm going to round up to 20, because I know we've always been here. So that was archaeological evidence from an excavation at Daisy Cave out on San Miguel Island, and it hasn't been published yet. But I know the archaeologist. I wish I'd been out there with him. Okay. And that's my family portrait. That's my mother, Lucy, my father, Vincent, my sister, Rachel, Rosie, Vincent, Patrick, Gloria, Leo, and me. And I know exactly the date because I was pregnant with my first daughter, 1985. And I don't know if that's it. Might be. Oh, I just love that picture. I used to work in a jewelry store. So it's my sister Rosie. Okay. First time that many people have been on Santa Cruz Island, we went to the opening of the new visitor center out there at Scorpion. Beautiful building if you haven't been out there. And so yeah, so my one sister Rachel wouldn't do it. She was too scared to be on the boat. I said, oh come on Rachel, the freeway's worse. Scarier. Go ahead. We welcome people. We do demonstrations. Here we are in our regalia. When the Hokulea came out here, not this last time, but the time before. The Hokulea is, oh no, that was a Hikihanalea. And then this last time they came in with the Hokulea. There are their traditional vessels that they navigate. They star navigate their way. They went around the world, stopping into all these different places to do cultural exchanges. So the first time we met them was in Santa Barbara, like in 1991 or something like that, and welcomed them there. So they do this on an annual basis. So they stopped out here at the Ventura Harbor. We greeted them for the 2 weeks that they were here, doing cultural presentations and honoring them as they came out. So these are my cousins here, Brenda Guzman and Jasmine Arredondo. And here we are at the protest for the statue. You know, it was something that I don't hear too much about it now, although there's a film coming out. So I don't want to spend too much time on this when I'm almost done. But you know, we took our stance about not having Ventura be represented. If you're going to represent it in that fashion, put everybody else's religious icon in that space so that it represents all of us and we're all included. But that was never done. And just the trauma of these other relatives talking about what happens to them when they see that image. And they said, well, how about a statue for the Chumash? I said, go down Palm, a couple more, blocks away, put in the whipping post or the stocks, okay? Because that's a good representation of us in that time of what happened to us. So, we got it moved. It's back over at the mission where I think it's inappropriate. And, again, that was a hard time. That was a hard time. My father, that was part of the energy. I'm sitting at home, he says, get up. I said, get up what? Go where? So I called the mayor, I called my family, and we had a meeting. And it was them who decided it's going to get moved. So it's not there. And I don't have anything against religion as long as you're not a fair-weathered friend with it. Our stories have lessons in them. They come to us at a time when the animals were people. So I don't know if there was, were we going to take any questions?
Yeah, if you'd like to take.
Yeah, let's do that now. Okay, let's see what the next slide is, just to see. That's my daughter, Robin, and these are all my cousins. Okay, and there's my great-grandmother. These are my sissies. That's Gloria and Rachel, my daughter, Robin. We do a lot of festivals around here. My elder, Adelina, from San Ynez, and Monica, and myself. There we are welcoming the World Championship Longboard competition in Malibu. We didn't surf those days. Okay. And I do have my cousins here too, Gigi and Casey. And I do, here we are making pine needle baskets at a Goddess Spirit Rising Conference in Simi Valley. There's the little starter baskets with the pine needles. And my bear, that's one of my spirit animals, is the bear. Okay, that's that's my husband, my other daughter Paula, my son Aaron. I love their names. Alexanayet is Aaron's name. It means that which is final and commences again, like the mist and the fog that comes and goes, but stands firm. And Paula's native name comes from her great-great-grandmother, Alula Mewe, one who drags her feet. Biggest willow in the town of Chimayo I've ever seen. It's gigantic. Oh, I have that in there. Oh, because he's Thomas. I got him from the Thomas fire up in the 150. So of course I named him Thomas. There's a whole litter of kitties. So I went back and got him. That's Aaron. They identify themselves, but not as much as I'd like them to. Okay, let's stop there. Oh, I can't help with the Winona LaDuke. I ran into her about the time of the Dakota pipeline. And she goes, I said, are you Winona LaDuke? She said, yes, I am. So we went outside and took a picture. You never know when life is going to take you. Thank you so much. That's our astrology. So we all have astrology in some place. So for me, it's in November. No one's ever satisfied. So if there's anybody that have any questions or was wondering about something I didn't cover, or afterwards, you know, I can always be found on Facebook, or I can be found in the phone book in Ojai under Tumamait. I still have the same landline for the last 50 years. So, but thank you very much.
I have a question for somebody else.
Oh, sure.
Can you please invite them to our event Saturday?
Oh, that's right, okay. Yes, Casey's is doing a Red Dress Day. Red Dress Day honors the missing, murdered Indigenous women, children, and two spirits. 1 to 4 out at Bell Arts, Saturday, May 17th. Thank you for that reminder. Yes?
I read that there are like 3,000 Chumash and people buried under the mission.
Probably. And well, some of them they moved out because the new building where the offices are, that was a cemetery there. They moved them out to the park further up on Main Street. But no identifications, no markers. And then they tried to build a recreation building on top of them. So I don't know what happened with any of them right now. But at one point, yeah, they were all buried out there. So it's hard to know. Yes, ma'am.
Near Colmore, there was a sweat lodge or something that I went to in 1980s.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Does it still exist?
I don't know if it does. Maybe Moses Mora was holding these sweat lodges. They're very different. They're more of the Lakota Inipi styles. Sioux, which now they call themselves Lakota. So that's with the hot rocks and the water inside, and they make the steam. Is that what it was? Yeah. Ours were subterranean, dug out 4 feet, and there was a fire in the middle. And you had to climb down the top of a ladder and climb down into the hot sweat. And then you'd climb out and go find water somewhere to cool off. So it was a hot. The women and men had separate lodges that they went into. Yeah, no one's ever built one of those. I'm too claustrophobic to get to it. Anyone else? Oh, okay, yes?
Do you know any basket weaving classes?
Santa Barbara, I think, was still having them every 3rd Saturday at the museum, but there's another gal, Samantha, but I'm not sure that she's teaching Native Chumash young girls. I don't know if it's open to the public. Do you know? You guys?
But we met with the lady from Santa Barbara. She said it was just Chumash women.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, it's really specific, but you could try to call the Natural History Museum in Santa Barbara, because that was open to the public. Okay, all right, you're welcome. Yes?
Is there anything that the general public can do to support the Chumash community, like any initiatives or?
Yeah, but they're really difficult, and it has to do with recognized status, which, you know, it's not really anything set. I just think that when we move and we build, that we take into consideration that there's thousands of years of archaeology under the ground. We're not a federally recognized group. I started a group, it's 25 years ago now, and I resigned 3 years ago. And so it's a nonprofit. But right now, I'm not sure that they're really doing anything locally in the public. But if you see their name out there, know that there are families and, you know, support them that way. I don't know if they're going to file for recognition. That was the point of it. We have property in Satakoy that we'll probably be doing some fundraisers for. So just keep your eyes open. But thank you for that question. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
How can we better take care of your land?
By getting to know it. When you're out and about in the world, don't go stacking rocks. We're not Sedona. Plants will talk to you. And it is something that, if you want to read something like that, Zoe Schlanger, Light Eaters, L-I-G-H-T, the Light Eaters. Kat Anderson, Tending the Wild. There are all stories in there of how people related to the natural world. They had to. Why wouldn't you pray to something that has fed you and cured you? Or, you know, fed your family and clothed you. You know, they're ancient around the world. And I don't want everybody to become Chumash. I just want them to become indigenous, going back to their places, like with the sage. We all had frankincense and myrrh. Maybe that was used. No, not elderberry. Well, that's a keystone species, but mugwort. In Indo-European, they used to braid a big, long piece of mugwort, tie it around the waist, and then in the summer solstice, jump over the fireplace several times in the fire pit, and then take off the belt and throw it into the fire. So that's probably emulating their prayers, and that they let them release so that they be heard. So we all have these ceremonies, and I mean, I love multicultural, I love interfaith, and I think we all could do a wonderful job coming together and having festivals like that. I would also love to have a Native American, remember the competitions that we just had? That the people came out here and did their Olympics here? I would love a Native American Olympics of just Native games. Wouldn't that be fun? One of these days. We all have ideas and thoughts, so, I think just acknowledging and doing a little homework, doing a little research, knowing that everything out here, has been here, but trying not to do lawns. Try when if you have lawns, try to incorporate more. I don't like hardscapes either, because these plants all live together. They all have relationship with one another. And another thing that we should know is that we're losing our bird population because of the non-native plants. Bugs and insects will not host on non-native plants. And then there won't be any food for the birds. No bugs, no caterpillars, so they have nothing to feed their babies. So what do? They stop nesting. They will not feed their babies birdseed. So then you have species dying. So to transfer all your beautiful plants that you love, we have a beautiful rose that is a native rose. We have all these beautiful plants that seasonally, that if you make certain areas for your butterflies, the milkweed, Santa Monica Mountains is what I call kind of like, I was using the word Starbucks drive-through, but it's the monarch drive-through that they were planting thousands of milkweed along the coast, because the butterflies are coming from Mexico. They're flying all the way to the other side of past into Canada. If they don't land, if the tree that they landed on in those generations is gone, they die. They go to the same tree. So there's all these animals that migrate. So when we look at restoring our native landscapes, it's only going to get better. And to look at, I had a whole bunch of other stuff, but I'm not going to read it. The sovereignty of water, of education, of energy, of, there was another one, fire, that we look at their sovereignty and the needs of communities individually, but as a whole, come together. There's a group of people, Dutch, New Zealand, the green plans. The green plans for the Dutch have been working for 18 years. Everybody's in cooperation to make sure that the earth and the environment come first. What a concept. Anybody else? Last question. All right, I know they got some awards coming, so thank you so much again.